Hello, welcome back to my channel, Autoquality Sews. My name is Catherine Baker and today I'm bringing you an add-on to the Pythagoras dress tutorials. This one is going to be a more detailed tutorial of how to do the pockets and also the add-on Pythagoras skirt. So I have experimented with using a very similar style to the dress pattern, so I'm calling it the Pythagoras skirt because it's really just the bottom half of the dress but with a waistband added with elastic and a drawstring. So hopefully you can follow along with this, and please ask any questions you've got in the comments below or email me on my email address. Hi everyone, just popping on to do a quick tutorial about how to do the pockets for the Pythagoras dress or possibly the Pythagoras skirt, which is what I'm making here. Both have got the same method of putting the pockets on. You can put them on any method you choose, but this is just the method I chose and there's been a few questions about it, so I just thought I'd post a slightly clearer explanation of how to do this. So I'm going to be making the skirt. So for the skirt, it's different because we don't have the point like we do in the dress that goes up into the bust line. We've got a little flat section at the top, so I'm going to cut that off, but I've just left it like this because this is how it would be for the dress. Now for the dress, you would go and measure from the top point down about 21 centimeters, and you'd place a mark here for the start of your pocket bag. That's what is comfortable for me. Obviously if you've got slightly wider hips you might want to put it a bit further down or narrow it a little bit closer, but from my experimentation this seems to be around about what works. For the skirt I'm putting them 4 centimeters down from where the top will start, because obviously the skirt will sit at your waistline, so you want the pockets to be a lot higher. In my first sample that I made I put them a little bit too low down, so I'm trying this and hopefully it will work. And what I've done is I've actually marked out my sewing line. So that is 1 centimeter down. I've made my pocket opening 15 centimeters, and that's just so I can fit my hand in comfortably without it being too tight, but also not being too loose. And then what I'm going to do is place my pocket bags. Now your pocket bags might be a variety of shapes. If you're doing the dress one, you might be using the armhole. With this one, I'm using triangles cut out from the skirt, and I'm going to be using 2. That will be my joined together to make my pocket bags. If you're using triangles, I suggest you put them so that they go this way around so that you have a nice straight edge falling down, and so most of it is held into the seam, and that will make a nice shaped pocket bag. If you want to, you could cut off this bottom part, and I might actually do that in this one. Obviously it won't be quite zero waste then, but you won't have that excess fabric that's just sort of useless. So I think I will do that for my one. But to start with, what you are going to do is you are going to put them underneath your skirt piece, and obviously this will be the right side of my skirt. It's double-sided fabric, so it's a bit hard to see. And I'm going to line up the top of my pocket bag with where I want the top to be. And you want to have the majority of your pocket bag down low, so you want to have the top of your pocket bag near the top of your pocket piece. And I am going to pin it on. And then when I sew, I'm going to sew along this line. So I'm going to start at the edge. I'm going to turn at a right angle, so all the way along, and then sew back here. And then I'm going to clip into here to turn it out. So I've got like a little, it'll be like a little square shape that's okay, so we've sewn all the way around here, and now I'm going to clip into the corners, making sure I don't clip into the stitching, but getting as close as I can with a sharp pair of scissors. Quite hard to see the stitching line on bright yellow. Okay, and then I'm going to turn that out, and I'm going to flip it over, and you can see we've got the seam along there, it's sewn along there, and in theory I could turn it all the way out and have a little rectangle shape. But before I do that and press it, I'm actually going to understitch it because it's going to help my pocket lining to not poke out. And so I want to make sure I fold the seam over to the pocket bag side, and I'm just going to finger press it because it's linen. And then I'm going to grab my sewing machine and I'm going to sew just along the horizontal line. So I'm going to start just about a couple of millimeters from the end, and then I'm going to sew. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is grab my other pocket bag piece and place it over the top with the right sides together. So that's my understitching here, and I am going to place it together other way around. Obviously they're not quite symmetrical. And I'm going to sew around the edges of this, so starting at the top and going right around the outsides. And I think I am going to do what I said, which is just chop off the bottom piece of this, just so it's not such a triangle. So I'll sew around that as well. Team no pins. Okay, so I've rewound my bobbin, fixed up my seam, and I've also gone ahead and just overlocked all around the outside of the pocket, so it's nice and neat. So now what we want to do is we are going to turn. So see how we've put our pocket bag on the top, we turn it over so that the right side of the skirt is facing, and now I'm going to go and press this, but I'll just show you it with just some sort of finger pressing, just so you can see the shape. And you can see that we have got our pocket bag in here and the pocket is here. And this is going to be that front line of your seam. And if you're making the dress, this would be the top point between your bust, and the pockets would be on either side of it. And we're going to do another one on the other side, but I'm just showing you the one for this quick tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and press it, and then I am going to stitch a line at 1 centimeter to hold those pocket bags in place. But I just want to make sure it's pressed flat first so that when it lies under the skirt, it hasn't got any bubbles or wrinkles, which can happen on the bias. And then it just simply becomes part of this seam. So when I go and sew it to the bodice piece, if you're making the dress, or the back piece of the skirt, you are just going to sew it all in one. And I suggest you sew it from that side so you can see where your original seam is that you sewed. Okay, so you can see I've pressed it, I've made sure it's sitting nice and flat, and now I'm going to sew that seam, and I'm going to make sure that my seam just actually touches this corner here, because when I put it into my seam with the top of the skirt, I want to make sure it's as invisible as possible. And I'm going to stitch with a long stitch length so I can remove these later if they are showing. So I've just gone right over that point there. So that means my pocket bag is now held in place, and I've got a beautiful pocket in my skirt or my dress. Just note that this bit here is on the bias, so you do need to just be careful that it hasn't flared out, because we've stitched a seam line here. You could pull it up, especially if you've used a long stitch length, just to make sure that it's sitting nice and flat and not flaring out. Okay, so you can see I've now put both pocket bags on, and they are sitting underneath the top point of the triangle if you are doing the dress. Now for the skirt, I'm actually going to cut at this line here, and this is going to be attached to my waistband across here, and I'm going to attach the other triangles on. So if you're just here for the pocket tutorial, that's it. If you want to stay on and see how I make the rest of the skirt, then go ahead. So here's the layout for the skirt. Again, you're using a rectangle of fabric, and I used a piece that was 140 by 110, and you start in this bottom corner on the left and draw out the main skirt piece. Note this is my layout for 97cm hips. I'd suggest you go back and watch the video from the previous Pythagoras dress tutorial to figure out your calculation for the hip width, because that's the most important part of this. You can see there's basically two pieces to the skirt, and then the rest is pockets and waistbands. Okay, so if you're making the skirt, it's a little bit different from the dress, but a very similar concept. It's just going to have a waistband attached rather than obviously having the bodice and the armholes, so it's a lot simpler. You're just going to have one other large triangle, and the measurements of this triangle are going to be the same as the sides of your first triangle, a bit like the measurement we used using your hip measurement to find that side piece. So like the bodice and the dress, you have got this, but it's just in one large triangle so that we're not going to have a centre back seam. If you wanted to, you could divide it into two and have a centre back seam, which will actually make it a little easier to sew, because we're going to have a little point that we've got to insert for this one. So what we are going to do is we are going to match up this side of the dress, which has got the pocket bag, with the right angle point of the triangle at the back of the dress. Okay, so this would be where you'd usually have another triangle that you are joining on, but we've just got one large one. And so what we want to do is, just like we did when we were doing the bodice of the dress, make a mark where you're going to sew. So we've got 1 centimetre seam allowance marked in with that cross point, which is where you are going to sew to. And you are going to pin it to your dress with that point marked. I know I said team no pins, but sometimes we use pins, minimal pins. And hopefully it should match up all the way to the top here, which is where I cut off that piece. If it's not matching, just make sure that you are attaching it with a nice straight grain and that it's sitting nice and flat. Mine's actually not perfect, so I'm just going to, because we can always cut off a little bit extra at the top or the bottom, but you're better to have your seam sitting smooth. So I'm just going to pop some pins in here. And when I sew it, I'm actually going to sew from the opposite side. So the reason for that is we've got this line here where we stitched, so we know where to stitch so we don't catch our pocket in. So I'm actually going to stitch from the opposite side and switch my pins over. sewn my back seam. You can see there is the back triangle and then there is the back seam, and I'm actually going to finish my back seam each side so I can press it open, and I'll finish those together with the right side of the overlocking on this side so I can press it up. I'm going to do a little bit of clipping once I do that just to make sure it sits nice and flat. And it should be all good. Just turn it out to the right side so you can see. So you can see on the right side we've got this nice V here at the back. As I said, if you choose to, you could do like on the dress and cut this triangle in half, and then you can join these two separately and then join your whole back seam together, which would be an easier way of sewing it and give a different look. Okay, so I have finished the seams and pressed them so these ones press up towards the bodice and these ones press outwards. The other thing you can do here, and I did it in my first skirt, is to add a slit, and so I left some of the seam out and did a slit. Maybe if you want a slightly bigger walking stride, if you're making it quite long, you might want to do that. I think this one's fine because I've left quite a bit of space in the hips, so I'm going to sew it all the way up for this one. Okay, so the next step is to add on my waistband, and to do that I'm going to do a bit of a lazy method, to be honest, and just fold it in half and sew it on and then overlock the seams. I feel like that leaves less bulk inside the waistband for when you put the elastic in as well. And I'm going to leave a channel open for the elastic, so I'm going to mark the halfway point and I'm going to sew to here, and then I'm going to sew a little bit on the other side so that I've got this bit here left open to put the elastic in once I attach it to the skirt. Okay, so I've just sewn here and here. Not very straight, as I've just realised, but that'll be fine for the elastic. So I'm going to press it open, and I'm going to press those seams open so that when I put the elastic through there will be a hole. And then I'm going to go and press it in half and make sure it sort of matches up nicely. I think when I cut this I didn't do it particularly straight, so I'm going to press that all in half and then pin it onto my skirt, and I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, so I've pressed it and you can see there's the elastic channel. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to divide this into fours by putting some pins, a bit like when you put a ribby neckband on or do elastic on undies and things like that. So I'm going to fold it in half again and put a pin at each of these points. And the reason for that is because I'm attaching this waistband that is on straight grain to a bias skirt, and so this is just going to allow me to do it nice and evenly and not have any puckers. And then I'm going to take the top of my skirt and I am going to mark my midway point between my pockets as my centre front. So put a pin in here, and then I'm going to fold it in half and do the same thing at the back. So that's going to be my centre back point. The other thing you may want to do is, if you're wanting to add a drawstring, is to add some buttonholes. So I've marked the centre point of my waistband before I've pinned it on, and I'm going to add some buttonholes here and here, just marking where I want them to start, and using my buttonhole foot with a very small item put on it, so we just get like a little mini buttonhole for a cord to go through. Okay, so you can see I've got my buttonholes here on the right side. They're a little bit messy looking, but they'll be fine once they have the drawstring going through them. And I'm going to go and pin the waistband back onto my skirt and then sew it on. Okay, so you can see I have attached the waistband, and I've also just overlocked it and pressed it downwards so that it is attached to the skirt. And now I'm going to go and put the elastic into it. So I've got 5cm elastic just because I wanted a really nice wide waistband. Obviously you can adjust your waistband width depending on your elastic. The size I used was just the full width of fabric I actually had, which worked out fine, but you just might want to, the width of this, sorry, the length of your waistband strip that you need is the measurement that you calculated for your, that you're going to have for your hips, or the hypotenuse of your triangle of your skirt. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put this in. Okay, so I've tried it on and got it to around about what I think is the right point. I'm going to cut off the excess elastic, and then I am going to pin and sew this together. It was just still a little tiny bit too loose, so I'm just going to take that a little bit further over, and then I'm just going to sew 2 vertical lines, 2 or 3 vertical lines down here just to hold it together firmly. Okay, so now I'm going to prepare my strips for my drawstring. So these were 2 4cm wide strips. And I have sewn them together on the leftover bias just because that's going to create less bulk in my drawstring. Now, 2 ways you can do this. You can fold this in half and sew it, and then turn it out with a loop turner, but I really hate doing that with linen, so I'm actually going to run it through my bias binder machine to make it fold in half and then fold the edges in, just so that I can then stitch along the edge and have a slightly easier way of doing it. I think, yeah, that's what I'm going to do this time. I think I've done that slightly bigger than 4cm, so I'm going to trim that off. Okay, and then I'm just going to top stitch it to make my drawstring. Okay, so I have top stitched just along one edge of it. I don't want to do both because I don't want it to be too stiff, and it's mostly going to be hidden anyway. Now what I need to do is create my channel for my drawstring, and so I'm actually going to top stitch 2 lines 1.5 centimeters away from the top edge and 1.5 centimeters away from the bottom edge of the waistband, and that's going to create the channel for the drawstring to sit in and also just give it a nice top stitching effect. And to do that, what you need to do is make sure that your elastic is evenly distributed as you want it to be, and you are going to put 4 pins in just to hold the elastic in place. So 1 at the center, just sort of stretch it out and make sure it's all sitting nicely. 1 at the side seam, and not that there is a side seam, but where the side seam would be. 1 here, and 1 at the back. Now when you do the back one, you might like to make sure that it is, when you stitch it down, it's going to enclose that elastic at the back. You could also hand stitch that if you want to be nice and neat and tidy, and I'm going to be lazy and just make sure that my pinning encloses it. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and stitch with a reasonably long stitch length, stretching the elastic out as I go. Oops. Okay, so the last step is just to hem it. I like to keep a bias skirt hem nice and simple because you don't want too much bulk in it, and this one I'm giving quite a deep hem too, just because I think with linen it's nice, it gives a bit more weight and helps it to hang, whereas a fabric like rayon or viscose or satin, I would do a teeny tiny little pin hem, or just a simple overlock and fold up at 1 centimetre style hem. But this one is a little bit bigger. On a bias skirt, I like to stitch from the right side, and I'm just going to feel where they're overlocked edges and stitch it. Not much science there, but just roll with it. And we are done. Bias skirt with pockets that don't gape. I've had a wee try on of this one, and I will post some pictures once I have managed to take some modelled photos. But I think next time I will move the pockets out slightly more in between what I did the first time and this time, just so that they are slightly more to the sides. They are nice and handy, but I just feel like they are a bit too high here, Either that, or I would start the pocket bag a bit lower. That would be possibly a good option as well. But all in all, I think it looks really good and should be a really fun summery skirt in this lovely linen from the fabric store. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and I am going to pop some pictures up here of me wearing the dress, which hopefully you can, sorry, not the dress, the skirt, so hopefully you can see how it hangs. I made it in quite a heavy linen. Pop on over to my Instagram where I've got photos of the first one I made, which was in a more drapey rayon, so you can see the difference between the two. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again.